Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week I'm fitting a computer control chip into one of my locomotives. See you in a minute. Right, it's time to open up a bit of post that's arrived over the last few days and that I haven't had a chance to look at yet. I really don't know what's in some of these because, as I've mentioned before, you order something on eBay and it comes from China. It takes 2 months to get there. Right, first off is... yes, now then. My tablet is in a pretty sad state. And although I've replaced it, I've actually got a replacement battery for it. So that will be an upcoming video in the future about how to swap the battery on the tablet, which is a bit of an unknown for me. Next up we have a large letter from somebody. Yes. This is cycle cart stuff. 20mm drill with a stepped shank. I need to drill out a pulley to 20mm, and that hopefully is the big boy for it. It's all a bit ghetto, but again that will come up in the future on a cycle cart video. These I think are some router bits I've got on order. I'm hoping it's a set. Yes, it's a set of router bits. I quite often like to use with the template the bottom bearing ones as opposed to a top bearing down the bottom, so it will follow a pattern on the top of what I'm doing. This is for my benches, or my bench for Morrison's that we've got to make. And then last but not least, I think I know what this one is. This is a sound chip for one of my locomotives, and that will be the subject, I think, probably now I've got it, of the rest of the video. They're pretty easy nowadays in that they have made these things plug in rather than solder in, so I've got a speaker to solder on and I've got a couple of lamps to work with. But it should be a fairly straightforward job, so I'm going to clear all this mess up and we'll see if we can get some sound coming out of one of the locomotives. So this is the locomotive that I've got to put a chip in. It's an odd one really, this, in that I was doing something in the workroom up in the house the other day, planning to do some alterations in there. And I found this and I genuinely cannot remember buying it. But then when I got to see the other side of it, I realised what it was, because somebody's started to sort of weather this by spraying it and brushing down some of the dirt that they've put on it. And I realised that it was from the collection of one of our members in the railway club who sadly passed away during COVID, but not as a result of COVID, I don't think. And so that I can only assume that's when I got it, but I'm still not entirely sure. It's a normal 12-volt type locomotive that you would get and put on a track and connect 2 wires up and it would run. It's going to be converted to DCC, which is a digital system that enables you to run several locomotives on the same bit of track at the same time independently, and you can then add sound and light and all sorts of things. But before I do that, I want to make sure it's running properly, so I want to get the little chassis jig that I did the alteration to the other day and put the various parts on it to make it into a rolling road, and then we'll connect 12 volts up to it and leave it to run in for a few hours. So let's put a little bit of power into it and see what happens. Nothing. a pretty good start, and a good reason why test these things out before you go too far. Right, we'll investigate a bit further. This has all got to come apart anyway to get the chip in, so it's a useful start. Can't be that difficult, there's only 2 wires coming in to a motor. Aha! Looks like somewhere along the line the body's got trapped in taking it on and off, and there's a broken wire in there. So that is the first thing to deal with, and I'm guessing that if I sort that out we'll be away. Let's just try to twist them together and see what happens. We'll worry about a permanent repair in a minute. Just try and twist them together. Right, switch it on, turn everything down, and we're off. We have power. And that's precisely why it's to be run in, because at the moment it's struggling to actually keep going. It probably wants a spot of oil because it's been standing for a couple of years. Better. I'm just going to leave that now for a bit, and I'll go and get the soldering iron and get that repaired. Now this has had an hour or more so far running. It's already down running at 12 volts. It's taking about 350 milliamps, whereas it started off taking 500, so things are obviously bedding in and becoming lubricated, because it's just not drawing the current that it was before. Motor's reasonably warm but not too hot, and doing okay at the moment. I'm just going to slow it down now onto a slower speed, because hopefully now we'll get some decent slow speed running. Pull it. Right, that's repaired the broken wire. Just reroute the wires so that they are out the way. Put it back on test. So first thing I'm going to do is to solder the speaker on. It's probably the only soldering you really need to do on this, although I've got a couple of lamps I want to fit later on. But in the old days you would need to solder all sorts of wires onto the decoders, but these modern ones that are specifically designed to go with locomotives that are already ready for them, if you like, they just plug in effectively, so it makes an awful lot of makes the whole job a lot easier. So there's just a little loudspeaker plus and a loudspeaker minus on the board. Just on that. Let's check that there's a gap between the two of them on the board, which I think there is. Yep. And the speaker fits into a little enclosure under there. So I need to make sure the wires will going okay. Probably have to cut a notch out on the side of the speaker housing. So we'll pop the little housing back on, put the wires in through the hole I've just made. Right, so that's the speaker in, and the chip itself, as I say, is just a plug in. There's already a board on there which is designed to do the work of running it without a decoder. It just connects all the wires up as they need to be. But we now take that board off. Okay, so next is to lift the board off that's already on there. It's 21 pin, I think, there. And all I've got to do now is get the decoder which is supplied and plug that in. They also are now supplying them with keeper lives, which I used to have to put on and have bought in the past the components for. It's effectively a large capacitor that keeps the thing running if it gets onto a bit of track that's got dirt on it or anything, and so it just carries on then until it next picks up a signal telling it what to do. Now that, I believe, will just plug straight on top of that one. It will only go one way because one of the holes is blanked out, which is that one in the corner, so therefore it must have to go, let me just check again, yeah, must have to go on that one, that way up. That just pushes down straight on to there. The little keep alive, I think I'll just probably tape that down there, I'll tuck that in down there. Just a small capacitor. Now that in a sense is all it needs. At the moment I'm just going to get the body back on and give it a run. Before I do that, I think I'll go and swap the control for a DCC one and see if we can get some noise out of this thing. Right, so I'm back to the little bit of programming track that I built many years ago as a project on the channel. Just got to clean the track because this has just been lying up in the workroom for a couple of years without any use. So I'm going to give it a wipe of isopropyl alcohol and just a little Scotch Brite on the top. Hopefully then we'll be able to get something running. So we've got the locomotive in its chassis form, put it on the track, turn the power on, and we select locomotive 3 because all decoders come as default number 3. So it's loco 3, right. And see if we've got any sound. Function 1. It's a good sign, we've got some noise coming out of it. Need to maybe turn some of them down, we'll see when we get the body on. Let's see if it runs now. Now it should go forwards, which is that way. Yeah. Backwards. So that's working successfully. So that's it working on the test track, but how will it perform in real life? Let's go and have a look down at the Railway Club. There we go. Yes. Well, that's got the chip fitted, another loco added to the stable. What I'm going to do is dirty that thing up a bit, weather it. I'll probably do that in one of the videos in the future, and of course these things always make more work. I'm probably going to start and think about making boxes for my locomotives as well to keep them safe when they're in transit, but that'll be for the future. Hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll try and be doing something different. I'll see you then. Bye.